You should say that.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And with that, I do believe we are live. Welcome, everybody, to our very first episode of a new show that we call Teacher Feature. Now, there's my host, Jonathan Baca. How's it going, Jonathan?
Good. We're doing obviously this with Color Circuit. We're part of Breaking Math, a podcast that aims to make mathematics accessible. And today we have a show that we're very excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, actually, before I go on and tell you guys about Teacher Feature and why we have a show called Teacher Feature, I'd like to introduce our guests. We have with us our esteemed co-host, or our esteemed guest, Amy Lynn, who is a teacher at the Public Academy for Performing Arts. Amy, I will let you speak for yourself.
So I've worked with Jonathan and Gabriel on Breaking Math. I almost did it again. I'm a math teacher, and so their whole mission at Breaking Math is to make math more accessible to everyone. That's my whole job. That's everything I do. Who I brought along today is one of my favorite students. This is Hala Hughes. She is NHS secretary. I'm the NHS advisor this year at National Honor Society, for those who aren't in the know. So basically what that means is that she's a really good student and a responsible person, and this is Hala.
How's it going, Hala?
Oh, well, it's going well. I don't like to talk about myself, but
I'm
excited to be here.
Oh, awesome. And Hala, tell us, what classes did you take with Miss Lynn?
I took Algebra 2 last year, and now I'm taking Calculus this year.
Oh, okay. Very good. So you know her both from your algebra class as well as your calculus class as well as National Honor Society.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Awesome. Very good.
Hala's actually what we call at Papa. She's been at Papa longer than I have. I'm on my 3rd year. She's on her 7th.
Oh, wow.
That she's what they call a lifer. She's been there since she was in 6th grade.
Oh.
And she's a senior this year.
How cool.
Yeah.
Very good. Awesome. So we have a lot planned for our show today, and I thought I'd go and tell for our audience the general format of the show. We want to spend a little bit of time, and we want to talk about what Teacher Feature is and where it came from. Not too much time. We're then going to take a look at the website for the Public Academy for Performing Arts. That's the charter school, of course, that both Miss Lynn and Hala teach at and attend. Sorry, that came out wrong. And then after that, we're going to talk about Amy. We're going to talk to Amy as our guest and talk about what inspired her to become a teacher, what inspired her to teach mathematics, as well as a few other questions as they come up. Okay, so first of all, the show Teacher Feature. We are thrilled to partner with the Color Circuit for this show. This is our very, very first live show. The only thing that Jonathan Baca and I have done before was a podcast called Breaking Math, which we've now released about 18 episodes. It started back in February, and the entire idea behind Breaking Math is having a talk show about mathematics, which is the language of the universe, which is a passion of ours. Jonathan, what do you think about, how would you explain our inspiration for Breaking Math?
Our inspiration for Breaking Math, and actually pretty much any creative endeavor that we go into, is based on the notion that pedagogy is almost self-perpetuating, that to learn, you have to learn to learn. And to learn, you have to learn to teach. And to do that, you just use the new media that we have at our disposal nowadays. We have these amazing machines, and we've decided to use them. Broadcast is for everyone now, and that's our whole mission.
Yeah. I think that's pretty cool. Yeah. Of course, with the Breaking Math podcast, it is audio only, as we mentioned earlier, and it's also the focus of Breaking Math is mathematics. That's not the case with this show. What makes me excited about this show is I'm a big fan of a lot of talk shows. I'm a big fan of old shows like Johnny Carson. I'm a fan of Jimmy Kimmel. Do you all have favorite talk shows?
I really like The Tonight Show.
Yeah, or Ellen,
Jim
or
Fallon.
how about yourself?
Oh God, I'm almost embarrassed. I like Last Week Tonight. I think it's funny.
Yeah, it's all good. Oh,
Yeah.
You know what else? I'm a huge fan of Stephen Colbert, both his old stuff and his new stuff.
Yeah.
He's great. Now,
QI is also great.
It's entertaining.
very good. Reason why I bring that up, I wanted to create a talk show where we interview teachers as the celebrities, and there's a few reasons why. I used to be a teacher myself. I am very, very much into education and how education is done. I think that education is, of course, critical for civilized society. And specifically with teachers, these are people who have dedicated their lives to educating people. They are we of course they are presumably very, very proficient in a given topic, and they are well versed in it. And I once heard that if you really want to master a topic, then get to the point where you can teach it. Then you've learned to think about it from all angles.
Certain studies have even shown that you retain about 80% of the information that you teach versus 20% of the information that you're simply taught.
Yeah, that's really cool. Now, personal reasons. In my life, I have had teachers who really stirred a passion in me for a given subject matter. When I was in 4th grade, I was one of the very lucky students who had Mr. Michael Briggs, and that was a year, I think it was his 3rd year teaching. He turned his entire classroom into a rainforest. We had a whole unit on the rainforest and on ecology, and it was one of the most awesome things ever. And that actually, in part, inspired me to become a teacher as well, just the topic itself. In middle school, I had an awesome science teacher. His name was Mr. John Glazer. He was just phenomenal, and he taught us science. We learned, I had biology with him for 1 year. I also had physical science, and that's part of what inspired my own passion for physics, part of it at least.
Now, what you're saying inspires a question for Amy, because a lot of what happens when we go to school, in a lot of the reasons why teachers are like celebrities, is we remember them by name. We remember them as being these almost not exalted, but definitely raised figures. And I'm sure that everybody who has teachers has 2 or 3 that stand out like obelisks. Who are your obelisks?
Well, the first one that comes to mind was my high school math teacher, Mr. Meyer. And really what was huge with him is I had always been a good student. My parents always joked and called me a Stepford student, that I got straight A's. I didn't have to try very hard. I mean, I worked hard, but it was never difficult for me. That I was just good at school, which is in its own way, it is its own skill to be good at school. But when I took Mr. Meyer's class, I had him for Honors Algebra 2 Trigonometry, and then I had him for AP Calculus the following year. And I don't remember exactly when he told me this, but at one point, so he had a degree in chemistry. He'd gotten a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry, and then had gone back and become a math teacher. And mostly he was a math teacher because he had enough math in his science degree. And he told me that. He's like, I'm not a mathematician. I never was. I'm a chemist. That's what my degree is in. And he told me, you're better at this than I ever was. And that was a huge moment for me, that my math teacher, someone whom I respected, and it was one of the smartest people I'd ever met, had told me that I was better than him at his subject. And it was just a huge moment of empowerment for me. And looking back at it, or when he told me that, I was, I reevaluated. I always took it for granted that I was good at math because I never knew any different, that it always did come pretty easily to me. He pointed out to me that was unique. And that was just a huge moment. And he was just a lot of fun. He was a cool guy. Is a cool guy, I'm sure, somewhere here in Albuquerque.
Oh, wow. How cool. Yeah, very cool. How about yourself, Paula? I'm going to put you on the spot. I know this show we've got your teacher, Miss Lynn, of course, but including Miss Lynn as well as anybody else. Do you have any memorable experiences with teachers that really helped you to see something a new way?
Well, I've always really loved English and history, and I respect all of my teachers. It's not something I feel obligated to do. It's something that I just feel towards them. I'm trying to think of the word. I really admire one of the teachers at Papa. Her name is Miss Allen. She really got me into wanting to learn more about history and the world, and like how everything came to be what it is now. And
Nice.
Sherry Allen would be a wonderful person to have on this show. She's been teaching for, I don't want to round up and insult her, but for over 20 years.
Nice.
That much I know.
Sherry, if you're watching the show, we'd love to have you on then.
Well, what's great about her? So last year she's a middle school social studies teacher, and she, I think, pretty universally is loved by every student who has her, and she has every student who goes to Papa in middle school.
How cool.
They the last year at the 8th grade, so it's the eighth grade going into high school. They have a like a ceremony and a dance that is their congratulations. You finished middle school. You're going to high school. And at the 8th grade dance last year, they had bought her a commemorative plate. Her room is just covered in like the American, just their commemorative plates that she really loves. And they got her one, and they sang the Constitution song to her because she had taught them that song. And it's just, yeah.
That is awesome. Oh, that is so cool.
Well, and she's still so excited about what she does. She gives me faith because I do see teachers who've been. I'm on my 3rd year of teaching, so I'm still bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. But I see teachers who are veterans who are very jaded, and then I see people like Miss Allen who still love what they do and still get just as frustrated and just as excited as when they were my age.
Now, something that both of you said that rings true to me is these teachers tend to be inspirational, not because they're insanely good at putting things into your head, but they're insanely good at showing you the things that are already there. Would you agree with that assessment? And if so, how do you use that in your teaching?
I think it's about sharing your passion and showing them that you are passionate. Because especially if the kids really like you and respect you, and I remember even having a talk with them at one point that math is something that I care very much about. It's something that's important to me, that I find beautiful and appreciate. And when they see me appreciating something, even if they don't like it, even if it's hard for them, I think they still recognize my joy in it and get some of that joy from it as well. I don't know if that's your experience, but
well, whenever I get a problem right, like a really hard problem, I just feel this sense of like, I'm so happy when I get something that I don't understand.
Nice. I think, Jonathan, what you're saying was it's kind of like what I believe Socrates believed, where he thought that all knowledge was already in our souls. We just had to discover it, something like that.
A little bit, the soft version of that. Okay. Absolutely.
Okay. Nice.
I did have one more question, not to step on toes too much, but I have one experience that I had with a teacher who definitely was like the teachers that you mentioned, Mr. Zuber, who we hope to have on the show.
Yes.
Is that he taught me a technical skill that I did not know before, which is how to write a paper. I used to hate writing papers, and he just taught me it technically, and then I loved writing papers after that. And I don't think it was entirely his infectious manner of being. So do you guys have any examples of teachers like that just taught you things very well?
We've got a special guest.
We have a guest.
We've got no, it's all good. It's all good.
It's our mascot.
Yeah. We've got a. Let's see who do we have? Oh, mail lady. We should bring her on the show. Ask her what her favorite teacher is. So she's on the route. Oh, okay. Well,
this is what it's like in a classroom. By the way, there are constantly interruptions.
Yeah.
They've put up, it got so bad this year with the announcements in the middle of class that they've put on a rule that they're not going to do any interruptions during the bulk, like the 45 minutes in the middle, and they've already broken that rule.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Carnival yesterday ruined that. Hopefully it'll start up next week because I think it really did help.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean the announcements, the all calls over the announcements of like, we're looking for this one student to come to the office, or we're looking for one person, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, let's announce the newest members of the thespian troupe. It's like, oh my god, I'm trying to teach.
Now, what you've been saying brings us on to another part. Segue, guys. What are some difficulties that you faced teaching in your first 3 years that you did not think that you would face?
Are you telling me that as a first-year teacher, it's difficult? I'm just kidding.
I remember when I was so I took CNM alternative teaching licensure program, that they did a good job kind of preparing us for what we were going to face, at least administratively. There's only so much preparing you can do for the classroom. Like you're either going to be afraid of the kids and get over it, or you're not, you know. But I remember one of my great teachers there, Kelly Peters, is amazing. She said that education is the only job where we eat our young.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't really know what she meant until I started teaching. And unfortunately, it's pretty true that a lot of new teachers get hired because they're needed to fill a position that nobody wanted, or they're needed to fill several positions. So I didn't actually have, my first year was I taught 3 different subjects. I taught pre-calculus, algebra 2, and 7th grade math.
Oh, wow.
Which was a pretty heavy load for a first-year teacher, but I have heard worse. I've seen worse. Last year, one of our teachers, Miss Ingham, had a really rough schedule. She had 6 different classes that she was teaching. It was insane.
Oh, bless her
And
heart.
part of it was just that she's K through 12 special ed, which is just a high needs area.
Oh
So
my gosh.
and at a charter school, like there's
Yeah.
pros and cons
Yeah.
to being a small school. We are a public charter at Papa. That we have 380 students, 6 through 12, which means that we have to offer the same number of classes as a middle school and a high school
Wow.
with a fraction of the staff of either one. So it just, everybody gets stretched really thin, and that's just the case in a small school. Everybody has to pull their weight in a bunch of different ways. But I remember Lauren last year, Miss Ingham, she saved me. Like she had 6th, 7th, and 8th grade honors science. She had 2 different math classes, I believe. She had high school special ed math classes, two sections, and then she was also doing a targeted assistance, which was our 8th period math specific assistance. So she was, I don't know how she survived last year. I'm not sure I could have. She's like incredibly strong. And that's the whole We're Eating Our Young, that she's, 23 years old, just fresh out of college. And we give her this monster schedule, and it really kind of weeds out people who aren't really committed to education.
My goodness. I've heard that same phrase, eating our young, with nurses as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, there should be a whole show for nurses.
My
and
mom's a nurse.
Their
yeah.
stories. Goodness. Man, that's as you said that, I just want to plug this real quick. I really want to have a show or multiple shows specifically honoring special education, because I think that is really the front lines, where you're really there's such a high need, and what they do is it requires so much. So I think that they certainly ought to be on the show as well.
Well, something I read recently, there was an article about how we kind of enable the system to take advantage of us. And it's very much the case in medicine as well, especially my mother's had this experience in nursing, that they say, you got to do it for the patients. They really guilt trip you into, because you are in a service career, that I'm here to help people. And so they use that to kind of guilt you into working harder. That teachers, we definitely, I don't think there's a single teacher, certainly not at my school, and I doubt there's any that exist, that don't work outside of school. At least a couple times a week, or on the weekends, or over the summer, that they're not doing something for their classroom, for their students. And we commit a lot of ourselves and a lot of our time outside of school because we have to, that there's just not enough time in that 1 hour that we get. So we get 1 hour of prep, which is an hour for us to get the work we need to get done. For 6 classes, there's just no way.
Yes.
And it's all because we, most of what my time is taken up with is administrative stuff that I would love if all of my time was taken up with, and it is, the planning for class and preparing new lessons, but a lot of it is filling out paperwork, and a lot of that is, and I don't even know what we would do without our special ed department to fill out all of that specialized paperwork, that if we had to do all that ourselves, there's just no way.
Oh man.
But it's just the amount of work we have to do, both on the, in the classroom, just being a teacher in front of students and having that charisma and that energy to try to keep them entertained and interested. And then the grading behind the scene, and the preparatory work behind the scene, the presentations, the notes. And then on top of that, we have meetings, and we have individualized education plans for certain students that we have to meet specific needs, so special ed, or behavioral intervention plans. There's all kinds of stuff that we are legally responsible for, and it's a really tough job. And I do get a little frustrated when we get you get off work at 3:30. First of all, I get off work at 4:30. But it doesn't end until the school year ends, and even then we get about a month of recovery before we start planning again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. Yep, I remember that. I certainly do.
So what is your perspective of all that? Because I know when I was in high school, my senior year, I was pretty lazy, but I worked really hard in high school. But I still remember having time to be a kid. I hope you do too.
Yeah, I do have spare time. Now that I have a job and I have school, and I don't have a lot of classes that require homework. I think most of it is just your homework. And I only work a couple days a week, so I usually have a lot of time to myself, which is both a blessing and a curse, because I'm really lazy sometimes and I want to be productive, but I can't.
Yeah.
No. Oh, excuse me.
Oh, go ahead.
I had a question for you. When Amy was talking about preparatory work, obviously that preparatory work is to an end that's going to show up in the classroom. And not to put you on the spot in front of your teacher, but in what ways has this additional work been made apparent? Or is it not apparent? Or is it like going to Disneyland where you don't see the people behind the scenes? Or is it something where you really appreciate?
Do you see the magic?
Well, I'm in Miss Liz's room all the time. I practically live there, honestly. I see all the work she does for all her kids, and she makes sure that everybody has what they need. And she lets people come up to her desk all the time, and they ask questions, and she helps. And she goes around to students all the time and helps them out with math questions or personal problems or whatever's going on in their life. And I do see a lot of the extra work that she does because she makes sure that her notes are really comprehensive, and she makes sure that we can understand what it is we're doing. And so all that work piled on top of being the NHS advisor, it's really impressive.
And being in the NHS, you're a little bit more embedded in the academic world, and so you probably know a lot of things that other students don't. For example, you, as well as people who were raised by teachers like myself, probably know how insane, or have thought about how difficult it is to grade things. It's like doing homework yourself. I used to help my mother grade.
Paula gets to grade.
Yeah.
Oh, do you grade?
I set up a system this year that I'm very proud of, and it's that all of my students are assigned a number.
Yeah.
And so my calculus students are grading the homework of my algebra 2 students, both as a way for me to do less grading, but mostly it's for them to get review. And I think it's been pretty successful. We've kindly worked out the kinks.
My gosh, that's actually, wow.
awesome.
That's actually a really good idea. You know,
I love it.
okay, when I hear that, I consider the demands placed upon teachers in classrooms under laws, well, more like 5 years ago with No Child Left Behind, you know, when the laws were really strict. Things like that are phenomenal for enrichment, you know, like just to grade other homework, it like gets you thinking, I don't know.
Their homework's gotten really nice as a result, too. That they've graded other people's homework, and like now they highlight their answers, and they're very clear about when one problem starts and the next one
we
begins.
grade
And
messy papers, and
you should see them. They're like digging through trying to find one that's neat.
So,
And like, I want a neat one so I can grade it. I'm like, I wish I could do that.
Now, is there anything that you wish that you had more, like just as a student, is there anything that you wish that you knew about the experiences of teachers, either firsthand or secondhand, that you do not know that would help you in your academic success?
I don't know.
For example, all right, then maybe let me redirect the question a little bit. If you knew that you were to learn almost everything about this part of a teacher's life, what hour or portion of a teacher's day would you like to live vicariously through a bunch of teachers? So would it be grading English, math, science, etc.? Would it be prepping for it? Would it be writing lesson plans?
I think writing lesson plans, I want to see how she does it. I want to see how everybody does it. Like, her notes are so nice.
Nice. Wow.
Like, she has different sections, examples already.
You know what's interesting to me? I've been wanting to ask my students this, that the students I had last year in Algebra 2, I made them keep a notebook that I graded. And it was a composition notebook, so mostly so it wouldn't be giant binders that would get lost and like papers would fall out. So they had composition notebooks, and then I would collect them every couple weeks to grade how well they were taking notes. And over the course of the year, I did notice that at the beginning of the year, they were just doing it because they had to. And then about through the first quarter, I saw them actually using their notes and going back and looking through them like, oh, she went over this and she did examples of this. And I remember having that moment last year. I haven't had it this year yet. I'm working on it. But I definitely had it last year where I saw them using their notes, and I was so excited that they actually saw my notes as a resource, because that's the whole point. And my goal is to teach them how to be college students. That the vision and mission at PAPA, at Public Academy for Performing Arts, is excellence in performing arts and excellence in academia, and that means college. We're a college preparatory school, and so my class, Algebra 2, is the last required. They need one more math credit, but it's the highest level required by the state that you have to take algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2, and I'm last in line.
Nice.
And so I really try to push them towards that college preparatory. And I noticed, like, what difference do you notice from this year and last year on your notes?
I'm using them a lot more.
Mhm.
I think my notes are definitely neater. Like last year, you would make little notes on the board and I wouldn't bother writing them down. But this year, I'm just like, I gotta write this all down. I know I'm gonna need it. And like on the homework, I just use my notes a lot more and I use the examples that you do. And I feel like since it's harder math for me to understand, I just like going back and like recapping and like, okay, this is the steps. These are the steps I need to take. And she went through this, so it's okay.
Do you find that that has kind of crossed over to other subjects, the note-taking strategies? Okay.
Definitely.
That's good.
You know, I'm wondering, is this a good segue where we can perhaps pull up the website for the Public Academy for Performing Arts?
Yeah, let's talk about Papa.
This excites me. So art is a passion of mine, and the fact that they have a charter school that is specifically the Public Academy for Performing Arts is so cool. I want to minimize my own talking on this, and I'd love to hear from you guys. Dylan, can we pull up the website for Papa?
He's working on it.
Oh, look at that! It's behind us. Look at that. See? Cool, huh?
Is it?
Yeah. See?
Oh, hey. There it
Cool.
is. Cool.
So we're looking at I'm sorry. Let me let you guys go. Will you walk us through what we are? Well, actually.
So our website, they actually recently, I think they redid it last year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
end of
fancy.
last year.
It's nice and
Okay.
fancy now. Our colors are black and teal, as you can tell.
Okay.
Mostly our website just tells you, if you want to look in the student handbook or whatever, you can see our vision and mission. For the most part, we're just excellence in performing arts, excellence in academics. That's our vision and mission. That's our goal. What I have noticed, especially coming from, I went to Sandia High School, so go Matadors, but I went to a really big high school, and I had some kind of small school experiences in that I was an honor student. I knew my teachers pretty well because we had smaller classes and we were good students and like very focused. So I think we had a more similar experience to what you'd have at a charter school. But I have, I think about 100, I have less than 100 students this year, which is not even close to, I have a friend who works at Sandia now who has the legal limit of 180.
Oh my gosh.
As an English teacher, she has 180 students, and I can't fathom that.
How do you read that much?
Right? I mean, she'd have to read the first paragraph of all their essays or something
That's
just to get
insane.
through them, you know?
Wow.
I don't know how she's survived. I should check in on her, see how she's managing.
Oh, yeah.
But that's really a wonderful thing about Papa, that we talked a little bit earlier about the pros and cons of a small school. That is definitely a pro. I know my students and I know them really well.
Nice. Only in the interest of time, can you tell us some of the programs offered at Papa that you may or may not find elsewhere?
Well, dance for sure is
Okay.
that's our biggest department.
Yes, yeah.
I think there's music just about everywhere, but we have an awesome choir. You're in Les Chanteuses, right? So Les Chanteuses is our all-female honor choir that I think is just high school.
7th grade and up.
Oh, everybody but 6th graders. We do have a 6th grade choir as well. They're so cute.
Nice.
Really what's interesting about Papa and what I noticed about the students there, they do kind of have to grow up a little bit. They have to be a little more mature to be able to balance a rehearsal schedule and academics, and to prioritize what's important to them, and that we weight our academics and our performing arts equally.
Nice.
That makes absolute sense. In hunter-gatherer societies, there's very little incidence of depression because everybody has so much to do and so much responsibility. I see how it translates.
Yeah.
A couple of things that you guys said reminded. I want to ask the converse of the question that I asked Hala to you. You like me and Gabriel grew up in the dinosaur era where the internet barely started existing, things like that. Is there anything that you wish that you knew about the experience of being a student nowadays that you had to build soft skills in your teaching repertoire?
I mean, in some ways, I wish I was a little more fluent in the technology that they're just immersed in. But I think most of the reason I want to know more about it is to help them get out of it. Because learning in mathematics especially, you have to write it down. You have to show your work. You have to draw pictures. And I don't know, Snapchat's not a great place to do that. Or, typing in words that are only, you are instead of your, that I do kind of wish I understood it better so I could kind of draw them out of it a little more. Let's say, this is appropriate for this time. I don't know. I've definitely noticed it more this year than in previous years, that my students are much more addicted to social media and like their phones than in previous years. Even, this is my third year. My first 2 years, it wasn't this bad. And so I try to use technology in a way that will appeal to them, but I don't really want to expose them to more technology because I think it's good for them to get away from it now and again and to use their brains in a different way and not in an interface way.
Yeah. I heard there's actually a school in Silicon Valley where it's a school where they specifically teach programming, and they have like a whole class where they do no technology at all. All they do is like sorting games and like physical activities, and because it's precisely for that reason. They don't want to be too reliant on it. And you also want a fundamental understanding of a sorting algorithm, so you actually do it with boxes and balls and things like that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that perspective, and a little bit with your perspective, especially the part where, I'm a programmer by trade, and when I write an algorithm, I do it on paper. I have a computer at my disposal, but I make sure that I understand every little bit, and I'm one of the few people that actually writes their programs down longhand first. I learned from books from the 60s that told me to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the shoe hasn't evolved really in when they find Piltdown Man? Not Piltdown Man, but the guy in the glacier in Switzerland.
Oh gosh.
Wasn't he 15,000 years old?
Yes. Yeah.
The shoes were still the same. So old technology still is worthwhile.
Yeah.
And it's great that you brought that up.
Oh yeah. Nice. Thank you. And actually, on that note, I wanted to ask you as well. With math, obviously, a lot of it is taking notes. That's really how you keep track of everything. Have you had a chance yet to really implement projects?
Most of my projects are making them do what I do. That you might remember that project from last year. You guys hated it.
Oh my God.
That they had to write a review and some practice problems and explain the concepts of things that we'd gone over previously in the year. And that was probably the biggest project I've done. Okay. I actually have kind of a miniature version of that right now for my current Algebra 2 class that they had to write a test based on what they've learned so far.
I've done that. Yeah, it's back to the whole to really see how well you understand something, try to teach it.
Yeah.
So you make the kids write tests. Okay.
It's hard to do. My first year I tried to do kind of a finance-based project, and we just didn't have enough time. That's not a big enough topic in Algebra 2 for us to take that much time on it. Yep. Which is unfortunate because that's a really helpful, I think, skill, and it's helpful knowledge to have, but we have so much that we have to get through in that 1 year. Yeah. And we had a lot of catch-up work to do from, especially my first 2 years, there'd been a lot of turnover before I got there. There were, several, better than I do, there were like 3 or 4 different math teachers in the span of 2 or 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And so they had, and not so much that the instruction was bad, but I think it was just real inconsistent about what they'd gotten year to year. So by the time I got there, it was like some of them knew some things and some of them didn't know anything, and it was basically starting in Algebra 1 and building from there. Goodness. This year it's been really fun for me to do Algebra 2, and then all of my students in Algebra 2 save for 3. I had 3 newbies I had last year. I know how they learn. I know, and that's again the advantage of the small school. I know my students really well. I know how to teach them something. I know how to introduce it. It's really fun. Laszlo is probably the easiest example. Laszlo's one of the presidents of NHS, and he's a very exuberant young man, and I know exactly how to teach him, and I know when I'm going to be able to blow his mind. And blowing his mind is so much fun because he gets really excited about it, and then he starts running down the hallways and going, woo, and punching lockers because he's stoked that he figured it out. And it's really fun that I have that previous knowledge from Algebra 2, from a whole year of working with these kids. I see them again, and I know exactly how to get them where they need to be.
Nice.
Now, a lot of teaching obviously is individual style. I don't think I've had 2 teachers who had the same style. So coordinating must be difficult. So I'm going to pose a creative question to you. Let's say I gave you carte blanche to make a school however you want it. You're the super principal. You're not just a principal.
Okay.
So you get to hire you get to hire people that they could be created in a lab, basically, to have whatever benefits and detriments that you want. I don't know why you put detriments in there. But it looks like we have a chat question which we'll get to right after this this question. How would you coordinate your teachers together? Because how do you do that with different styles?
I don't know that I would create my own teachers. That I want everybody's personalities. I think that's part of what makes us strong. That's part of what makes teachers interesting is how different they are, and their personalities are different, and the things that they love are different, and the way that they share that with you is different. I think that's what makes it so interesting.
Yeah.
And the question is from DJ Raga, it looks like.
Okay.
And this is for Hala. To the students, have you ever thought about being a teacher?
I actually have recently, very recently. I'm really into a lot of history. I like world history. I like U.S. history. I like just knowing things about our past. And I like that we can learn off of past experiences and hopefully not repeat what happened. I thought about being a history teacher for a while when I was kind of stuck in this rut where, like, what am I going to do when I'm out of school? I don't know. And I'm still considering it, but I'm leaning away from it more because I'm more interested in other things.
But just real quick, why history?
Like I said, it's just something I'm really interested in. I like reading up on other... Sorry. Other cultures, yeah. Yeah, other cultures, other experiences of past people.
I'm going to ask you a difficult question. It's difficult because there may not be one answer. Do you have a favorite part of history to read about?
I really enjoy reading about the Renaissance.
Oh, okay.
And not just in Italy or in England. I like reading about what happened here too.
Now, if you were to teach the Renaissance, what would be your strategy?
Probably immersiveness. I would like to do projects with it. Like, I was in 6th grade when my teacher did a project about, like, the Greek hierarchy. And so I had to dress up as a slave and talk about my experiences being a slave in the fields, and then other people were gods, and then other people were commoners, and I think I would like to do something like that because I found it really fun.
So how would you do that? Let's say the event was Martin Luther, and the whole Gutenberg and the whole propaganda plus publication of the Bible debacle. How would you teach that using an immersive thing?
Yeah, let's work on your lesson plan, Hala. Let's get it done.
Oh, that's intense.
Put me on the spot.
Oh, I have to think about that.
Come on, you're a National Honor Society.
Yeah.
You'll do fine.
That means you could do literally anything.
But literally, yeah.
I cannot tell you how many times I've heard, "I'm not your secretary."
Oh, yeah.
That's what's like, Hala, remind me of this.
gosh.
I'm not your secretary. Yes, I'm NHS secretary.
Yeah.
That's an interesting question. Yeah.
Yeah, it is an interesting question.
Maybe a debate or something. Have them debate. Have some of them be from the Catholic Church and some of them be followers of Martin
Yeah.
Luther. I'm sorry. I'm
No.
sorry. I broke a rule. I just like jumped in there and answered for you. So I'm sorry.
If you break a rule, you have to make a lap around the table. Just kidding. We have so many wires everywhere.
Yeah, don't do that.
I would
Don't
trip
do
over
that
these
either.
wires
Oh.
here. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hear you. Yeah.
I feel like a debate would be interesting, but I think I would like to do kind of what my teacher did and have different people research different parts of what was going on in that time and present it somehow. And I wouldn't want just a paper. I would want something to go along with it.
What is your performing art? You sing. Do you do anything else?
No, just music.
Just music? Okay.
Yeah, I like how you actually segued into that because I know that part of a lot of project-based learning is to incorporate not only like writing a paper in the expository skills, but also expressive skills like art and dance. So here's my question for you: not just limited to math, but in other subjects as well, other cross-curricular subjects. What ways have you seen art and expression incorporated?
So the friend I told you about, Miss Ingham, had a project with her middle school science class that they had to present different elements in different ways, and so they were I think they did like wanted signs that they were describing the element and attributes of it, and like, we're looking for this element. If you found it, it's the reward is offered. And this year they've got a big Harry Potter theme where they're just encouraged to use their imagination, and like, she's got different, in her classroom there's different houses, and they're grouped based on what house they're in, and they work together for the betterment of their house. And I know that she's working on especially for her honors science classes, that she's working on kind of a cumulative project where they present the material they've learned that year to the next year's students, that they're going to record it and have these videos. I remember she did raps last year. The kids had to write their own lyrics to, they did parodies of songs that they had to write lyrics about the science topics they were learning about.
Oh gosh,
which was really funny.
We did that when I taught math. There was a student. We never finished a student, but I had a student named Dallas Black. Actually, I had him at Ralph J. Bunch Academy when that was that charter school. I don't think it was around anymore. When they were around, he wrote lyrics to "New Divide" by Linkin Park, but it was about math.
Okay.
Now I have a question about this whole thing. First of all, creativity is difficult to define, so I was going to ask you to define creativity, but that's not what I'm going to ask, but it's similar. What do you think is it about incorporating creativity into learning and that makes it somehow more interesting or easier? Because if you look at it, if I were a psychopathic alien, I would not understand. Well, I would not understand this, because I would be like, it's more effort. It's definitely more mental effort. Why do you think it works?
It's all about buy-in. It's about doing what you, and all the research is really frustrating for me in Algebra 2 that very little of what I teach them is immediately relevant to them, that it's something they will apply in higher level math or science courses. And a lot of the research in education nowadays is to make it relevant so that the kids are, interested in it and engaged in it. And that's really where the creativity comes in. If I can give them some relevance by giving them an opportunity to be creative and have some fun and do the things that they love while they're learning, they're way more likely to do it themselves, to drive that education themselves. And I don't know how many times I've said this in the last week even, that I can't learn for them. That they have to be the ones that decide they want to learn something. And if I can kind of not coerce them, but kind of trick them into having some fun and showing what they can do in the the places where they are strong already, that pushes them to get stronger in math in the places that they're not as strong.
And do you think it's poverty of stimulus that makes creativity relevant?
Can we break that down? Let's unpack that.
Sure. Do you think the fact that there are so many different combinations of things, and the fact that they can make it about what they want, is that what makes it relevant to the student? Or is it relevant to the student because the student is enjoying themselves and they are tricked into thinking that it's relevant? Not tricked but
I think part of it is the freedom that they get, that a lot of times, and tell me if I'm wrong, that we give you an assignment and you just have to do it. And there's not a whole lot of room for doing your own thing within that. And certainly in math, that's very much the case. So you're just going to do the math assignment. So when I do have an opportunity to kind of let you guys be you and show me your understanding in a different way, I think a lot of times you really run with that. And it's probably more opportunity for that in other classes rather than in math. There really isn't, I don't know, copious amount of ways to tell me that you understand something other than doing a problem and showing it. But I think whenever we can throw that creativity in, it just gives you an opportunity to shine in a way that's a little less boring.
Nice.
A little less restricting. Yeah.
So let's bring it to, and I'm sorry for monopolizing, but
no,
just
it's all
real
good.
Quick.
Yeah.
When obviously teachers use creative, I tutor and I understand that aspect very well. Can you give us an example of an analogy or metaphor that you've used in teaching that worked extremely effectively and one that totally flopped?
Well, the first one that comes to mind is when I describe complex numbers, and I think I've used this one on Breaking Math.
Okay.
That complex numbers are so we're used to the real number line. It's a one-dimensional line that every number you can possibly think of is on that line. That at one point there was a mathematician, and you will know this. Is it Euler who kind of created imaginary numbers?
No, it was back in the Middle Ages. It was
Okay.
some algebraist.
I don't remember who it was,
He
but there
popularized
was
them.
a
Oh, yeah,
mathematician who was like, I need to be able to take the square root of a negative number. I need to be able to do that. And so he said, okay, just bear with me, guys. I'm going to call it I. And when I tell this story to my students, this is very much how I tell it, that he needed to be able to take the square root of a number. And so I draw the real number line on the board and I say, so instead of thinking of the real number line as just being one dimensional, this guy was like, well, let's think in 2 dimensions. And I use the analogy of Back to the Future of like, you're not thinking 4th dimensionally, Marty. That I've got a real problem with that. And a few of them get that reference because they've seen the movie. And a few of them are like, I don't know what you're talking about, lady. Because they need to watch.
the
They need to
second one.
catch up on their pop culture.
Yes.
But then the other analogy for complex numbers, we can't imagine having 2 apples. You can imagine having 2 apples. You can even imagine having pi number of apples because that's still kind of, pi is still 3.14. We can kind of round it and say that like, yeah, I have that number of apples. But you can't imagine 2 apples. And the analogy I use, I stole from Kate and Leopold, that their dogs are colorblind, right?
Yeah.
So they can't distinguish, they can't see a rainbow because a rainbow is just refracted light. It's just color. So just because the dog can't see the rainbow doesn't mean it isn't there.
Oh, wow.
And that's the analogy I use for complex numbers. Just because you can't see them or feel them or conceptualize them, it doesn't mean that they don't exist.
Trippy. I like it. I like it a lot. Yeah. I have a quick question. I want to segue. This is in the interest of time. I was hoping that you could actually walk us through the website, and here's why. There are some awesome pictures on that website.
Yeah.
A lot of students who we see. I don't know if there's projects on the website, but there's a lot of stuff that's worth plugging with Papa. There it is right there. Excellent. Yeah. So let us know where Dylan can point the mouse and click. So here's the front page. Obviously, we've already gone through it. That event already happened.
Yeah, Papapalooza was last night. So if Hall and I look tired, it's because we were running that for 3 hours last night. She ran the trivia booth all by herself.
That was a fall festival, right?
Yeah.
Those are so much fun.
Yeah.
That's what I miss. That's what I miss about teaching is like the fall festivals and stuff.
That
like
was a piece of artwork that was auctioned off. So the art classes had a competition, kind of a it's a friendly competition to see whose artwork would be included in a raffle. That's one of my students. That's Kristen Carrera.
Both of those artists are beautiful. I love the yellow and purple on that art. The in the previous one.
I did,
like,
yeah. I was like,
purple.
I got a good view of those yesterday in the basket, which I thought was really cool. So I think the main page actually has some of the best photographs that our students really, those are some of my, so that's Jolie Bradford. She graduated last year. She's an incredibly talented young woman. She's actually a good example of, I think, the performing arts bringing out the best in a student. That she wasn't the strongest student that I ever had, but she was very committed to her performing arts. She was very committed to the musical and to choir, and she made sure that she was always ready and always ahead on her work so that she could participate and be proactive. I have had every single one of the students on that stage.
Nice.
Those are some of my favorite, like Hano at the end there.
Okay. Oh, I'm glad it repeats because I wanted to ask you about more of them. Okay.
Yeah.
Look at that. Okay.
So her, I don't know. Do you know her, Hala?
No, I can't see her
Well,
face.
they've
I
got
remember
ballet
her.
and they've got.
That looks
That's
like
the 6th grade choir from
a couple years ago.
2 years ago.
Okay.
Where
Yeah.
we did Best of the Best.
That's cool.
Oh, that's Eric Mazzy. So Sarah, who's he dancing with? I don't know her. But Eric Mazzy is the son of one of the teachers who works at Papa. She was my mentor teacher, is my mentor teacher.
Okay.
And Sarah's son, Eric, is a pretty good example of someone he's a beautiful dancer, and he's actually dances professionally now. That the opportunities afforded him at Papa are unique to any high school.
Nice.
In New Mexico, certainly. That we really encourage the artistic side, and we encourage professionalism in performing arts, not just learning to dance, but being a professional and being on time and prioritizing. And
here's what I love about that. When I was a teacher, so there was such a strong emphasis on STEM: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Obviously, those are very important. Obviously, but the fact that there's a school for art, that is awesome. I think so.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, something that you just said was there's the student who's very committed, and that, I mean, to me, likely means that she would do well in her classes, so she could continue performing.
yeah.
I myself have never considered mathematics to be very engineering, if you could use that word. It's, to me, it's more of an art form, and just being immersed in an artistic environment seems like it would lead to some very positive like attitudes. And yeah, it's wonderful that you guys have what you have there.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. So,
What's your favorite part, Hala?
I like the balance, like between academics and art. I like that both of my electives are my first and second classes. So I have 2 classes of art with the same teacher. I would sing for the first 2 classes of the day. And then I come into the main building of the school and I have to do all my academic work and all of my not artsy stuff like my NHS and all the other obligations I have. And I just like the balance. I think it's fun for me to wake up and do what I love and then go into school and be able to like work on my schoolwork with a refreshed mind, sort of.
nice.
Interesting. And Amy, and this is a little bit of a question for you, and then I have a question for you. Is it obvious which students come from a class before yours that's more artistically focused?
Yes, especially the dance classes because they're usually late and sweaty because they've just had to change. I do notice that they're still in that artistic place. That even the musicians who aren't necessarily sweaty and exhausted from an hour of dance, that they come in and they're still thinking about the music that they're trying to compose or the piece that they're trying to learn and planning collaboration time so that they can improve. And it's really a lot of times I have to shut it down because we have to get to work, but it is fun to see them being artists. And I love going to their performances. And I remember last year Riley wrote me, and Riley's not even really a performer, that he was in one choir. He was in high school mixed, but he pointed out to me, and he kind of had a collective opinion from people that he, I guess, polled, that they appreciated how much I liked going to their performances, that I went to their performances.
I bet that means so much to them.
I
It really
love
does.
it. I love it so much that I think every performance I cry because I'm so proud of them. And
That's so cool.
it's so funny because I have no right to be proud of them for their artistic ability. I'm proud of them as people. And it really is cool to see them outside of a classroom because I see such a different version of them than who they are on stage, especially the dancers. That you think about, like Marissa in class versus Marissa dancing flamenco. She is so poised and beautiful, and she's been doing flamenco since she was like 5. She's brilliant at it. Or Isabella, seeing her on stage versus seeing her in class, it's a totally different person.
Nice.
And you see this, this beautiful side of them that you never would have seen in a regular school. And I really am grateful for the opportunity to know my students that well, to say that I can go to a performance and I know most of the kids on stage and I know them well.
Now, the question I had for you is, you alluded to synergy between the artistic and, I don't know, I guess, business related parts. And actually, and right after this question, we have a new question on the chat that we were going to pose. But are there a synergy between you and other students who just came from a class that is creative and where you didn't come from a creative class, or vice versa? Working with students that aren't in the same mindset as you, does that help or hinder, or what's the deal with that?
Well, I have 2 choir classes right off the bat, and then I have an economics class with a lot of the kids that are in choir with me. And when we're walking up to the main building to go to our class, we're still immersed in our music. We're still hearing it in our heads. And then we get into class, and Mr. Oken is like, "Okay, guys, we need to stop. We need to get to work." And I feel like it just really connects us. There's not a huge difference between working with the kids that have just been in my music class and working with the kids that haven't been. I feel like since most of the kids that are in my classes I've been there with for 7 years, there's that connection anyway, so it's not very big difference.
And the question that from the chat is related to that one. This is from Definitely Bon. how's balancing the arts as as opposed to synergizing from them, I guess, along with trying to learn math and science in school? How do you balance that, not just benefit from that?
I guess I have just different mindsets. Like with my academics, I'm like, okay, I gotta learn this, I gotta get this done. And with my music, there's a lot more room for, there's a lot more time to learn something because we're not moving from unit to unit or song to song. We take the time to learn every song individually, and we get to take the time to get to know that song, like the dynamics, not just the music and the pitches and the words. And then with math and other academic classes, I think math and economics are my only academic classes this year.
Are the fatigues compartmentalized, or do they seep into one another? Like, do you feel just as ready to do an assignment for a creative class after doing an assignment for a mathematical class, or are they? Is it like working out your arms and then working out your legs, or is it like working out these fingers and then working out your arms?
I feel like it's different for every student, and for me it depends on the day. Like sometimes if I just had an audition and I had to learn a solo piece and an ensemble piece, and for me going from practicing those songs and then going to math, I was just tired. But on a normal day, I don't really mind switching from subject to subject. It's all just work for me.
I want to add 2 things real quick. That's an interesting question. I want to say my take on that. So I just got my master's degree in electrical engineering, and when there was a class that I was disinterested in, my creativity would go wild. My notebooks are filled with illustrations, top and bottom. Jonathan, you've seen them.
Oh yeah, they're wonderful illustrations.
Thank you. I wish that I paid better attention in those classes. I would have understood that subject much better. But you're right. When I'm not interested in a subject, or rather, when I'm trying to pay attention but failing, I somehow get in a mental state where I get real creative. That makes me think about aptitudes and about what people are good at. It just food for thought. Now the reason why, the other thing I want to say is it's almost the top of the hour, and we want to keep this show at about an hour. So I wanted to say what are some of the things that we'd like to either say and or plug at the end. I think I'll go last. Why don't we start with you?
Oh, okay.
It can even be come to our next performance or something like
Yeah,
that.
when is your next performance?
Yeah, my next performance is November 16th at the First Presbyterian Church. It's a choir performance.
Nice. Is it the like holiday one, or is it just is there another one?
No, it's just the fall concert.
Okay.
Our holiday one is December 8th, I believe,
That
at
one-
the
that one
same
gets me.
church.
Cool.
Nice.
I'll have to make sure to get priority seating for those. They're generally pretty crowded because our choirs are big at the school, and so a lot of family comes and it fills up quickly. But it's worth it. They're so good.
In the spirit of plugging your performance, are you down to sing for 10 seconds?
Oh my gosh. I'm good. I think I'll pass on that one.
Okay, that's fine.
We should talk about, I do have a number of singers in my calculus classes. You guys could be my background singers for the Hello parody that's coming up. That would be
A
fun.
hello? So wait, I'm sorry. A hello parody?
Yeah, I have a version of Adele's Hello that's Algebra 2 lyrics, and we're coming right up on it once we get to the rational root theorem,
Okay.
which
okay.
is here in a couple weeks.
That reminds me of my mom teaches math. She has a polynomial dance.
There you go.
And polynomials odd. And you go with that.
It's a good
Nice.
one. We just learned that. That's good. And behavior.
Awesome.
Do you know when the musical is?
I feel like it's sometime in November. I think it might be the 9th and 10th. I vaguely recall seeing it on the board in the teacher's
They
lounge.
send us a lot. Yeah, I need to look at that. But I'm really excited. We have a new theater teacher this year. That our arts teacher retired last year, and so we had a bunch of arts. We actually had, I think, 3 teachers retire last year, maybe
think so,
2 or 3, and so we kind of shifted some things around, and we have a crew of some fun people this year. But our theater department this year is putting on Oklahoma, which I'm pretty excited about. That's an awesome musical. It's going to be a lot of fun. I know a lot of kids who are in it, and it should be really good. So I don't know. Check our website. It's on our website, I'm sure, for upcoming dates on our Oklahoma.
Awesome. Jonathan, I assume that you and I are going to plug the same thing, but I'll let you go ahead.
Absolutely. We'd like to plug Frontier Restaurant. No, we'd like to plug. Our other show, Breaking Math.
Yeah.
We just did an episode on different frequencies. So
It's a great episode.
vibrations, light, sound, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you can see the website right up there.
Yeah, let's bring up the website. Oh, look at that. We're at the website. Oh, nice. Okay, cool. So I know there are a few things need updating.
Oh, and and Dylan, if you go to the app, if you go to the Hypercube page.
Okay, look at that. Look at
And
that
if
beauty.
you press up on the arrow key and then press enter 3 times.
Okay, look at that. Now, how do you make it go into color again?
You press spacebar.
Oh, we press spacebar, did
and then
Dylan?
enter.
Whoa! Yeah,
so
press
cool.
spacebar again. Okay, thank you.
Enter again.
Well, is it I? I think I makes the color.
Oh, is I make the color?
Yeah. No,
Whoa.
look at that. So we've got an interactive hypercube.
Yeah.
Now,
The point
Just
of bringing
press
up the
random
Hypercube
buttons.
is
Yeah.
that we're a multimedia entity.
Yeah.
If you enjoy Color Circuit, I'm sure you'll enjoy this, and if you enjoy Teacher Feature, I'm sure you'll enjoy
yeah.
Brain Math.
There's more applets too. Dylan, can you go to the applets and the applets tab? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
Click on the any one of those.
yeah, any one of those three.
I see one last question on our chat.
Oh.
How many songs do you relate to math? Well, really, I just have the one big one that the Hello parody is my crowning glory.
Yeah.
There are a few of my students who know a few songs from like middle school. The A squared plus B squared makes
I
C squared,
remember
something like that. And then there's
Okay.
one for the quadratic formula. There's little songs to kind of help you remember. Maybe we'll do an actual honest to goodness recording of the Hello parody because I put a lot of work into that last
Please
year.
do. Please
And
do.
the lyrics are legit, so
Okay.
they could be helpful to other teachers, which I'm
Yeah,
a huge fan
For
of.
reals. For
I
reals.
still have a recording saved.
Well, the recordings we have are just of kind of a dark room with a
Yeah.
PowerPoint presentation. So we do have students who can, film it
Nice.
legitimately and make it a music video. So
Oh.
we should do that.
I want to plug one more thing first. I want to especially thank Color Circuit for letting us team up with you guys and do this awesome show on your channel. Thank you. We are very grateful. Color Circuit actually has a number of shows coming up. One of them that I'd like to plug is the one tomorrow, I believe. Oh, there we go. It is Screen Source. It is a one where they talk about film and television and news reviews and trailers. I love trailers. Those are one of my favorite parts of movies.
In a world.
Yeah. I love it. So make sure you catch them there tomorrow at 3 p.m. on this channel right here. And I think those are all of my plugs for now.
Yeah, and Amy, anything that you want the world to know?
Probably. Mostly just we've had a focus this year at our school on mindfulness, and I think that that's a really good message just in general for everyone to try to empathize with and understand everyone's perspective. So I specifically mean teachers, that these are really hardworking people who are doing their best every day to help your child and to help the people in your life. If you think about it, that any given moment on a weekday, the majority of the nation is in school.
Yes.
If you include
And
teachers and
are
faculty.
really under the microscope in a big way.
Yeah.
So being able to support them.
And
is
just try to understand. I remember I had a parent come in and see a class, and it's not what you think. That like the experience you have with your one child, one or two children at a time, is very different than a classroom, and trying to get them to learn something that's hard and something that you may not even understand, especially when we get into higher level math that you didn't have to take when you were in high school, that your kids now do. But trying to empathize with your kids of, all the pressures put on them, with the teachers and the administrators and just everybody who's working their best for the betterment of your kids, and to see it from that perspective, I think would be really helpful.
Absolutely.
And how about you, Hala? Same question.
Anything you want to share with the world? Any book recommendations? Hala's responsible for I have a website,
books.
and she's responsible for the page that I have of my book reviews of my summer reading list that she provided. I think about 15 books for me to read over the summer.
Ooh, what books?
A lot.
A lot. So many.
What's one of them?
You can check out my website. It's papalgebra.com if you want to see my book reviews. I don't know if you care. What's your favorite book right now?
One of my favorite books right now is They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. It's a very frank title.
There it is.
Look at that.
Under the homepage.
Whoa, you have a fractal. That's awesome.
I do. Stupid. Yeah, that's my website that nobody looks at.
Okay. Well, we do.
Under the homepage, there's book reviews. So if you go to the home tab,
Yep. Okay, home.
there's my book reviews. Yeah.
Awesome.
I need to update
What do you
them.
got? Dead Wake, Divergent.
I love Eric Larson.
Oh, sweet.
Some of my students recommended some really depressing books.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's kind of a funny story and all the bright places and like just some really depressing stuff. I'm like, you guys need to focus on the good stuff in life. Goodness.
Yeah.
But
Heartless
yeah,
is a good
this
book.
was all Hala that she kind of started. I mean, a lot of these books were ones that I wanted to read. That while I was waiting for the books they recommended to become available, I read ones that were on my personal reading list. But it was fun to kind of give me a goal. There's the one
Raven
you.
Boys.
Yeah, I apparently need to read the rest of those because
Yeah,
I
you
wasn't.
do.
This is where it ends. Another really depressing one. I read that one right after The Book Thief, and Book Thief is about the Holocaust, and then This Is Where It Ends was about a school shooting, which is
Yeah.
just an awful thing for a teacher to read.
Gosh.
But yeah, there's
So
my review of
depressing.
it.
Now,
Well, it's terrifying
Yeah.
for me. That's
Okay.
probably my biggest fear as a teacher.
You know what? If you want a non-depressing book, what's a good book? One of them that I enjoyed, it's a little inappropriate sometimes, is Surely You Must Be Joking, Mr. Feynman. Have you read that yet?
I haven't.
Oh, it's just a romp.
That sounds
so-
good.
Also, I was gonna say Roald Dahl, but not really at all. He's terrifying.
Yeah.
One maybe lighthearted question after all that darkness, and I would like to maybe just ask this: most embarrassing moment as a teacher so far?
Can you think of anything?
No.
I don't feel like
I can
I'm
think of
really
maybe,
hard to
like-
embarrass. I'm like I'm pretty out there. Like it's all I'm an open book.
There was one week that was particularly stressful, and like towards the end of it, you were just laying on the floor, and you're like, "If anybody needs me, I'm right here."
See, but I'm not embarrassed by that.
Yeah.
Like
That's all I could think of.
I can still help you. I'm just gonna do it from the floor.
Okay. That's funny. All right. Well, I guess that's all we have planned for now.
Yeah.
And we thank you guys all for joining us on this first episode of Teacher Feature, helping us to put the spotlight on teachers and education and get us thinking about what it means to invest in quality education. Is that a good
I see a couple book recommendations from our chat window. Thank
Yeah.
you. I will. We've got Hitchhiker's
Ooh,
Guide,
Hitchhiker's Guide.
obviously.
Hitchhiker's Guide.
Obviously.
Hitchhiker's
Read that
Guide.
one.
That's right.
Name of the Wind. Okay.
Name of the Wind.
Oh,
Patrick
and also
Rothfuss. Okay.
book recommendation: Confederacy of Dunces, funniest book I've ever read.
Confederacy of Dunces.
That
Cool.
sounds funny.
Okay.
Thank you, chat people, for your questions.
Alrighty,
We're
guys.
not used to getting them from chat, so sorry if they took a while to answer, but thank you. We
Should
appreciate
end
you.
with, and that's the way the news goes.
Let me just say bye.
Or
Have a good
we
day,
could do
guys.
Like
That's what
a
I
team
usually
thing,
end.
like a team high five or whatever. Freeze frame.
My usual goodbyes. See you
Okay.
tomorrow. Or
I'm trying to
see-
freeze frame.